Back to this portion of Active Living at the Orient Center. Fortunate again to have another Navy veteran. We have Joe Zikewich with us today. Joe is a veteran of World War II and has some interesting experiences, I'm sure, to talk about. Joe, welcome to our show.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, when exactly were you in the service?
I enlisted in '42.
Okay.
And after I enlisted, I went to Great Lakes for training.
Okay.
And after got my basic training, I went to Boston, Mass. I was going aboard an aircraft carrier, but it wasn't the Lexington at this time. It was another carrier that was being built.
Okay.
But the Lexington was sunk in the Battle of the Coral Sea. So the sailors that were up in Boston were prepared to go aboard the carrier. They petitioned the Navy to change its name to Lexington.
So there actually were two Lexingtons, one that had been sunk in the Coral Sea,
yeah,
and the second one
that you
was
being built.
Okay.
So after completion, while us fellows were at the headquarters stationed there, during the daytime we would go into the Navy base and go on fire watch.
Okay.
And this is what we did during the day, and then we come back in after 4 or 5 o'clock. We come back into the barracks there and then go on liberty.
Where was this, in Boston?
In Boston.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like a good liberty town.
Hey, let me tell you. Have you got time?
Yeah.
Boston's a nice town.
It sure is.
It's military.
Oh, yeah.
It's strictly military. But after the ship was being completed, then we finally had to go down to South America for the shakedown period.
Right.
We got part of the way down there and we lost one of the screws. So we had to go back to Boston.
When you say you lost the screw, did it actually fall off the ship?
Yeah.
Oh, gee.
So I had to go back to Boston and they had to put on another one.
Okay.
It didn't take them long to do that. So after they got that completed, then our orders were to go to San Diego.
So how did you get to San Diego? Did you have to go through the canal?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And we got down into San Diego. We had to get prepared for getting the crews together. All the sailors were assigned different areas to have to go into, and then pilots or whatever.
Right.
And we was there for a short time. Then we went to Hawaii, and they completed getting this thing prepared.
Right.
Then we head off into the South Pacific. We got down into Tarawa. We was there for a short time.
Right.
And we got caught in the conflict at Tarawa. That was our first experience of combat. And let me tell you, that was brutal.
I bet.
The veterans down there hitting the shores, and a lot of them getting killed.
Right.
It's tragic because the tides weren't coming in just right. It felt a storm in the beaches, and
right.
And
they step off those LSTs right in over their head sometimes.
Yeah, lost it, and so we was there for quite a while. Then, consequently,
Now, your job, I assume that the job of that ship was to fly aircraft and support those troops that were going into shore.
Absolutely.
And they were bombing ahead of time.
Yeah.
Trying to soften up the beaches. I had an Army guy that I interviewed last week, and he was talking about how you guys had gone in and the airplanes had gone in and tried to soften up the Japanese that they were going in to fight.
Yeah, but the bad part about it was brutal. This is our first experience at combat.
Right.
This, I think, that it was just like a new life starting all over again, and we lost a lot of Marines storming the beaches.
Right.
And it was really pathetic.
Right.
But after they finally got that concluded, then we went back to Pearl Harbor again for a short time. Then we head off into the South Pacific again for patrol duty. We was on a lot of patrol duties.
Right.
And in fact, we run into a lot of combats there. At as a matter of fact, our experience there, the Lexington has been in 13 combat missions.
Wow.
And we got a good taste of it. And
Now, what was your specific job on the ship?
I first went aboard, I was just a deckhand.
Okay.
And after I got on for a while, I had a good friend that I grew up with. He was already in the Navy, and he was in communication.
Okay.
Yes, they had me in gunnery shooting those 5-inch 38s.
Right.
And
right.
I said, boy, this is not for this boy. So he arranged to talk to the people in communication, see if I could get in communication.
Right.
So I become a radio man.
Okay.
Then the only bad part about it is when you start out there training, I get my training there on the ship, which is not, it's time consuming. I didn't get a chance to go to school to shorten my time up to get a rating.
Right.
So that when I go over there, I just been in a Radio Shack for a long time before I finally got my rating.
So you basically was on the job training.
Absolutely.
You had to learn the Morse code and all that stuff.
Yeah. But you know, I was Morse code for a while.
Right.
And then he had another job assignment for me. I went up in the radar plot.
Okay.
I had to go up there, and they got a great big screen there with all the operations going on.
Right.
And I sitting over in the corner. I was responsible to copy the conversations between the people on the screen, giving us the information where are the ships and the planes and everything else.
Right.
And what I had to do was abbreviate this stuff and record it.
Okay.
Which was quite hectic.
In a battle, I would think it would be very hectic.
Well, what was so bad, you try to abbreviate so much stuff.
Yeah.
And consequently, conversations were only between two people alone. Nobody interferes.
Okay.
Because it gets confusing.
Right.
So that's always my responsibility doing that.
Now, did you have the board in the combat room where you have to write? You stand by the person writing on the board stands behind the board and writes everything backwards. Did you have that on the ship?
No, I didn't have that too much of that.
Okay.
But I was on that for quite a while, and then we was in conflict down in Majuro. We was down in Majuro on the island,
Right.
and we got hit by a suicide plane.
Wow.
And I was up in my like I said, my responsibility. Those conversations that were copying this, and these officers were standing there looking at the screen and they were talking about it, and two of the officers were standing and said, "Let's go out and watch operations." So they walked over to this great big hatch, a big heavy door.
Right.
They opened that up, and they just stepped out, and the suicide plane hit the ship, and you could see fire up around the door. So jumped up.
Those two guys.
There was they run over there. First, it had two hatches coming in, one from the left, one from the right. Went over to the left side, and a couple officers was coming up the staircase. One was hit, got a shrapnel in his leg, and laying there, and the medic was there and tried to help him out.
Right.
Do just as much as we could do. Then got back up to the radar plot, and there was two fellows that went out that other hatch. One of them got killed.
Oh.
And the other, and that really.
That's hard.
That tore me up right there.
Duty.
But you do what you have to do. You go on doing your jobs, and consequently, when that was completed, we had to come back in to the island or back to Pearl Harbor for repairs again.
Now, when you were actually in battle with these suicide bombers, how many of those bombers were attacking you at any one time?
4 or 5.
Really?
But see, the reason, what makes it a little bit better is that we got other ships. You're in a group.
Right.
You're got 8 or 10 ships. You got 4 carriers.
Right.
And everybody's in fighter planes up there chasing them around, and we're shooting them. They're coming in real low, you know.
Right.
These
right
planes
above the water coming in at you.
Yeah, and then we're crossfired into each other, and it's pretty hectic. But it was a lot of that, you know. But it was just these missions that we kept going on all the time.
Now, how long actually were you, you know, by the time you got to Hawaii,
Yeah.
how long were you actually in these battles?
Well, there was quite a few battles. We was in 13.
13 battles.
Yeah.
And most of those were fighting airplanes coming in at you.
In the Battle of the Coral Sea.
You were in that one too?
Yeah.
Wow.
And with these other ships, they competing against each other, you know.
Right.
And
right.
quite hectic it was. So I spent quite a time there in the Pacific. I had a lot of time in there.
So when this suicide bomber hit your ship, how many people did you lose in that particular battle?
We lost 47. We lost 47 and 227 injured.
Wow.
They were in sick bay.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's pretty hectic.
It is hectic.
Yeah, sure is.
I imagine it's a scary thing to see those guys coming at you like that.
Well, we go back to the States, up in Washington and Navy Yard up there,
right,
for repairs.
Okay.
We get our repairs and then we're back out again. And we stayed out there.
You go all the way back to Washington, D.C.?
No, Washington
State. That's right.
Yeah,
You're on the West Coast.
Seattle.
Right.
That's where we was in there for repairs. And consequently, a lot of those young fellas couldn't cope with it. They were jumping ship.
Right.
And they didn't want to go back again, and they slipped off, and finally they were picked up later on and did time, you know, in jail, so whatever.
Right.
But
right.
I first went in, it was in 42.
Okay.
And I knew that I was going to get called into the service. And I said, the Army is not for me. So that's why I enlisted in the Navy.
But the Navy wasn't a picnic either, was it?
No, it was quite hectic.
Well, you've had something to do with I understand you've had a lot to do with the memorial here in Lake Orion.
Well, I'll give you a good example for that. When these fellows that were killed, they had to bury at sea.
Right.
We had our burials out there.
Right.
And I was standing there, I was one of them standing there, thinking, these fellas are buried at sea today. Their mothers and fathers don't know for 1 minute what's happening today. And I stood there and I was crying.
I believe it.
And I said, when I get home, I'm going to make it a point that these fellas are going to get that recognition.
Right.
And that's what I've been on all these years. We got our memorial over there, the 47 fellows that lost their lives.
Right.
Their names are engraved in bricks.
That's what I understand, and that's terrific.
And this in our memorials is just beautiful. We're having a lot of good luck, and
we have.
They make me feel pretty good doing that.
We have some people coming in tomorrow to talk about the memorial.
Are they?
Just about the memorial, right?
Oh boy, it'll be interesting.
Well, first of all, we want to thank you for your service. I know you've sacrificed a lot for this country, and we've kind of got to wrap it up now. We're getting close to the end.
Well, it's been a pleasure for me
Joe,
to be able
thank you very much for your service. Thank you very much for coming in for our interview today.
I know that if there was time available, I'd carry on for another hour. But I think I'll give you a pretty good
Great. Okay, thanks for joining us, and we're wrapping it up.
Good.